Okay, here's some more trig ratios. Hopefully, after this lesson, you'll be able to figure out the difference between when you're actually finding an angle measure and when you're actually finding just a ratio or the fraction that corresponds with the angle. Okay, so for this, number 7 here, for any right triangle with a reference angle theta, so that'd be this over here, there are 3 different ratios that are associated with any specific angle in a right triangle. Okay, sine, cosine, and tangent. So all these ratios are different correspondence between, they're different fractions between, or combinations between the hypotenuse, adjacent, and the opposite. So the sine ratio is the opposite over the hypotenuse. The cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse. And tangent is opposite over adjacent. Now everyone's like, how in the world am I supposed to know this? How am I supposed to remember this? This is that crazy acronym that we had at the top of the paper. So remember SOHCAHTOA, S-O-H, C-A-H, T-O-A, SOHCAHTOA. Remember the H always comes first. Or they're in the first 2 slots there. So this helps us because sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. Other people write it like this. S-O-H C-A-H T-O-A. SOHCAHTOA. Okay, so again, this is our reference angle. Boom. Angle opposite. Opposite the 90 is the hypotenuse. Adjacent is what's left over. So for this, label the triangle, write the ratios between the sides given the reference angle. Okay, so these are my reference angles here. A is my reference angle. Here's B is my reference angle. So a little predicament here. I've got 2 sides, so how do I find the third? Good old buddy Pythagoras. So I'd have a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Quick review. The 2 legs, so connected by the 90, are always a and b. Hypotenuse is by itself. So if I am trying to find x, I would have 8 squared plus 15 squared equals x squared. So bring out our handy dandy calculator. 8 squared plus 15 squared equals 289. X squared equals 289. Take the square root. Second square root of my answer. Okay, or you can rewrite the 289. That is 17. So whenever we are doing these ratios, okay, for the sine of A, this is my reference angle. Boom. That would make this the opposite, the adjacent, and the hypotenuse up here. So sine of A would be opposite over hypotenuse, the sine. So sine of A is 8 over 17. Cosine of A, that angle, would be the adjacent over the hypotenuse. Adjacent over hypotenuse, so it would be 15 over 17. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. So I look opposite over adjacent. So that would be 8 over 15. Okay, now you might need to do a little erasing here because now I'm going to shift my reference angle to B. Hypotenuse will stay the same. Now I'm going to use, let's use red. B. So now this is opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. You might just notice the opposite and the adjacent just switch around. Okay, I'm going to let you guys fill in for B. Now, the difference here, let's say that it wanted the measure of angle A. Let's say it was asking that. All right. So for this, I could use any of these that have the angle A with it. Okay. I could do the inverse sine of 8 over 17. I could do the inverse cosine of 15 over 17. I could do the inverse, because those are the three different ratios for that specific angle. Okay, so I'm going to use cosine. Cosine -1 of 15 over 17. Okay, so then angle A would equal, let's check it out. 28.1. Now let's try, actually, if I could find a different way. I could do inverse sine of 8 over 17. Let's try that. Inverse sine of 8 over 17. Hey, look at that. It's the same thing. All right. If I want angle B, measure of angle B, I can use any of these ratios here because they use angle B. So I'm going to use the tangent one this time. Tangent -1 of 15 over 8. $61.9. Now, if you notice, when I add these two together, hey, look, they're 90 degrees. 180 degrees in a triangle. So if there's 90 and I know 28.1, you can subtract and get that. The difference is, okay, when you see this, when you see the word sine or cosine or tangent, it wants that ratio. Here, when it's asking for angle A or the measure of angle A, it's not asking for a ratio, it's asking for the actual angle. Okay, this is an equation you have to solve. Okay, or it wants sine of A is 8 over 17. This, it just wants the angle.